Spring, 1944. Monte Cassino, Italy. The young woman trembled as she peered through cracked shutters at American soldiers entering the town. Carmela Rossi had spent 2 years in a state-regulated brothel, a casa chiusa, where fascist propaganda described Americans as violent barbarians who would ravage Italian women without mercy. Now, as artillery rumbled in the distance, she prepared for brutality beyond anything she'd known in the dismal rooms where Italian and German soldiers had treated her as property rather than person. Across Italy that spring, approximately 7,500 women worked in the state-sanctioned brothel system established under Mussolini's regime. These chiuse, literally closed houses, operated under strict government regulation with women categorized, priced, and inspected like livestock. First-class establishments served officers exclusively, while third-class brothels processed enlisted men with assembly line efficiency. Military records from 1943 show that in Naples alone, 25 regulated brothels contained approximately 800 women, many coerced through poverty, family shame, or wartime desperation. Fascist propaganda prepared these women for American savagery. Films, posters, and official communications portrayed American soldiers as undisciplined, violent, and sexually uncontrolled. One widely circulated pamphlet described Americans as half-Negro jungle creatures with animal appetites. Women in the chiusa were instructed to surrender valuables immediately to prevent theft and violence when Americans arrived. Many hid small keepsakes, a mother's ring, a silver chain, a child's photograph, in wall crevices or beneath floorboards. As Allied forces advanced northward through Italy from Sicily in 1943-44, women in these establishments prepared for the worst. Historical records from the Italian Health Ministry document that brothel administrators issued special instructions for American occupation, including increased medical inspections and segregated facilities based on presumed racial preferences. The women were ordered to comply with any demand without resistance, as American soldiers were described as unpredictably violent when refused. Carmela, 22 years old, had entered the casa chiusa system after her family's farm near Cassino was destroyed in bombing. Official records show that approximately 65% of women in regulated brothels during this period entered due to war-related economic devastation. With no education beyond 6th grade and responsible for 2 younger siblings, she had few options in war-ravaged southern Italy. The brothel offered meals, a roof, and 25 lire daily, barely enough to send money home to her grandmother caring for her siblings. Italian and German soldiers frequented the establishment where Carmela worked, typically spending 7–10 minutes per visit according to brothel regulations. Military documents confirm that German officers referred to these women as Schlammstücke, mud pieces, while Italian soldiers used the term puttane, whores. Neither used names. Identification numbers sufficed for record-keeping and health inspections. Women were forbidden to speak during encounters except to confirm health status or settle payment. When American forces approached Cassino after months of brutal fighting at the monastery above the town, Carmela and 6 other women in her establishment received final instructions. Submit completely. Speak nothing. Hide nothing. Resistance means death. The madam distributed required red cards documenting their most recent health inspection, verifying they were disease-free for military use. On that spring morning, when 3 American soldiers entered the courtyard of the dilapidated villa housing the brothel, Carmela steeled herself for brutality. The first soldier, a sergeant from Pennsylvania, removed his helmet and looked directly at her, something forbidden in the brothel system. Rather than immediately producing military script for payment, he spoke to her in broken Italian mixed with English. "Buongiorno, Signorina. Possiamo entrare?" "Good morning, miss. May we come in?" The word Signorina, a respectful term for an unmarried young woman, hung in the air like an impossible thing. In that moment, the distance between what propaganda had promised and what stood before her cracked the foundation of Carmela's world. No man had addressed her as Signorina. since she entered the casa chiusa. The word itself, nearly forgotten, contained an acknowledgement of humanity that Fascist Italy had systematically stripped away. The US Army's official policy on fraternization with local women in occupied Italy officially prohibited personal relationships. US Army Regulation 11517B, established in December 1943, stated, "Non-professional contact with civilian females in theatre of operations represents significant health risk and security concern." Yet implementation varied dramatically from written policy. Military records show that by May 1944, as Allied forces secured central Italy, American commanders adopted a pragmatic approach that contrasted sharply with both German occupation policies and traditional Italian social structures. Inside the casa chiusa system, Italian regulations had established a dehumanizing classification scheme. Women were categorized by age, physical attributes, and specialties with corresponding price structures. Health Ministry documents from 1940–1943 confirm that women underwent mandatory medical examinations twice weekly, with results recorded on identification cards using numerical codes rather than names. Those failing inspections were hospitalized involuntarily, often subjected to experimental treatments. The system processed approximately 30,000 client visits monthly across central Italy before American arrival, according to reconstructed municipal records. American military guidelines, while officially discouraging fraternization, established fundamentally different protocols. Fifth Army Command Memo 27-43 instructed soldiers that all civilian women will be addressed respectfully as Signora or Signorina, regardless of occupation or social status. Medical Corps records indicate that rather than punitive approaches to health monitoring, American forces distributed prophylactics and educational materials to troops. More significantly, medical services were offered to Italian women encountered by American forces, not as mandatory inspections, but as humanitarian assistance. The cultural collision between Italian fascist gender hierarchies and American social norms produced unexpected consequences in the case chiusa. Teresa Lazzaro, whose memoir From Number to Name documents her experiences in a Roman brothel, described the transformation. "The first American called me Teresa, not my number. When I told him the price, he seemed confused and asked if that was enough. The concept that I might deserve more had never entered the building before the Americans." American forces established 37 aid stations across liberated regions of central Italy by summer 1944. Military records indicate that approximately 22% of Italian women seeking medical care at these facilities came from brothels. Notably, registration forms required names rather than identification numbers, an administrative detail with profound psychological impact. Women accustomed to numeric designation suddenly required names for interaction with American systems, a bureaucratic restoration of identity. The Fifth Army's deployment of Italian-American soldiers as interpreters further complicated traditional patterns. Approximately 15% of American forces in the Italian campaign were of Italian descent, many speaking regional dialects. These soldiers often explained American expectations regarding respectful treatment to their non-Italian speaking comrades. Captain Joseph Morelli, whose military reports from Naples provide valuable documentation, noted, "Local women express surprise at basic courtesies from American personnel. Simple behaviors, making eye contact, using per favor, allowing women to speak without interruption, apparently contrast with prior treatment." By June 1944, as Allied forces secured Rome, brothel patronage patterns shifted dramatically. Military police records document declining visits to registered brothels, with many American soldiers preferring informal arrangements where women were addressed by name and treated as companions rather than commodities. Receipts from American post exchanges show purchases of items specifically requested by local women: soap, chocolate, coffee, items valued for personal use rather than mere survival. Lucia Marconi, who worked in a Florence casa, chiusa, before Allied liberation, later testified to social welfare authorities. With Italians and Germans, we were meat with a price. With Americans, we became Signorine who provided a service. The difference cannot be measured in a lyre, but in restored humanity. This transformation, initially dismissed by Italian authorities as American naivety, represented a profound challenge to entrenched systems of control and classification. The nomenclature shift from prostitute to Signorina carried implications beyond simple politeness. American military correspondents increasingly distinguished between professional companions and coerced women, reflecting growing awareness that many in the brothel system had entered through economic desperation rather than choice. By late summer 1944, this distinction would reshape interaction patterns across occupied Italy, creating space for women previously defined exclusively by their sexual utility to assume new social identities and possibilities. The small brown rectangle, wrapped in silver foil, sat in Carmela's palm like an improbable treasure. American chocolate, Hershey's, given freely without expectation of additional services. The young soldier who presented it insisted she take 2 more bars for later, while refusing any reciprocal arrangement. This chocolate, costing 10 cents in PX stores available to every American serviceman, represented more than sweetness. It signified recognition of personhood in a system designed to eliminate individual humanity. Across occupied Italy during fall 1944, American goods transformed economic and social dynamics in ways neither military planners nor fascist authorities had anticipated. Military supply records document the flood of material abundance. 3.7 million pairs of nylon stockings shipped to Italian theatre operations between June and December 1944. 12 million chocolate bars, 24 million cigarette packs, 5.3 million cans of various foods. While officially intended exclusively for American personnel, these goods inevitably entered local economies through gifts, trades, and sales. The material value alone created economic disruption. A single pair of American nylon stockings could command 1/200 lire on the black market, approximately 1 month's wages in the casa chiusa system. A pack of American cigarettes traded for 300-400 lire, chocolate bars for 150-200 lire each. Yet women from the brothels reported something more significant than financial transactions in their encounters with American servicemen. Maria Conti from a Naples establishment testified to Allied investigators. The German gave money and took what he paid for. The American brought chocolate, asked my name, and wanted to know if I had family safe from the fighting. The difference isn't in the payment, but in seeing me as a person with concerns beyond this room. American military authorities initially attempted to restrict gift-giving, concerned about black market operations. Fifth Army General Order 117, issued September 1944, prohibited providing PX items to local nationals. Yet enforcement proved impossible, particularly as growing numbers of American personnel developed relationships with Italian women. Supply sergeants reported consistent inventory shrinkage of comfort items, soap, candy, canned meat, coffee. These didn't disappear through theft, but through countless small acts of generosity between individuals. Women previously limited to clinical transactions lasting under 10 minutes now reported extended interactions with American personnel. Brothel ledgers from Florence, preserved in municipal archives, show declining client volume but increased duration of visits. Records from October 1944 indicate American visitors typically remained 30-45 minutes, often bringing food to share, playing cards, or attempting conversation through limited Italian and sign language. The physical interactions had not necessarily changed, but the human context surrounding them transformed completely. In testimonies collected by Catholic relief organizations in 1945-46, former casa chiusa women consistently identified specific material items that signified their changing status. A bar of American soap, ivory, 99.44% pure, a pair of nylons, a can of peaches in syrup. These objects represented more than their material value. They were tangible evidence of human recognition that contradicted years of systematic dehumanization. The material exchanges created unexpected consequences for women's autonomy. With American goods holding significant value, women previously dependent entirely on brothel management could accumulate resources. Military currency exchange records show women from chiusa converting American dollars and purchasing supplies independently. A woman previously earning 25 or 30 lire daily could receive goods worth 500–700 lire through American generosity, enabling economic decisions outside the brothel system for the first time in years. Gianna Rossetti, whose diary survived in Cassino municipal archives, wrote in November 1944, "Today I held chocolate, coffee, and 2 pairs of stockings. The lieutenant says I should save 1 pair for someday better. This suggests he sees me having a future beyond these walls. Can such a future exist?" The concept that women designated as sexual commodities might have legitimate futures outside the system constituted revolutionary thinking, transmitted not through formal declarations, but through small material acknowledgements of human dignity. By winter 1944, as Allied forces pressed northward, American chaplains and medical personnel began actively intervening in brothel operations. Captain William Garrison, a Presbyterian chaplain with the 34th Infantry Division, documented efforts to identify women coerced through economic circumstances rather than choosing prostitution freely. His reports indicate 73% of women interviewed entered the system due to war-related economic collapse. These findings prompted unofficial programs offering alternative employment with American units, initially laundry and kitchen work, creating pathways out of sexual exploitation while maintaining income. By early 1945, women from the chiusa increasingly appeared outside brothel walls. American military employment records document this transition with bureaucratic precision. The 5th Army Service Corps hired 1,132 Italian women as laundresses between September 1944 and April 1945, paying 75 lire daily, triple the average brothel earnings. Employment forms required no previous work history, asking only for name, age, and identification number. This administrative oversight allowed women from regulated brothels to transition to legitimate employment without facing discrimination for past circumstances. The laundry facilities established near American encampments created unexpected social spaces. Women previously isolated within brothel walls now worked in open-air operations, visible to the communities that had formerly shunned them. Military photographs from these facilities show Italian women and American servicemen cooperatively managing massive washing operations, 50-gallon water drums, handmade soap stations, and clotheslines extending hundreds of yards. The physical labor was demanding, washing approximately 2,000 pounds of laundry daily per unit, but performed in daylight without locks or mandatory health inspections. Sophia Palmieri, whose recorded testimony appears in U.S. Army Civil Affairs archives, described this transition. "Inside the casa chiusa, I existed only at night. Working laundry for Americans, I stood in sunlight, earned money without lying down, and spoke with men who wanted conversation more than my body. The greatest change wasn't in my circumstances, but in how I began seeing myself, as a person with future possibilities." American military kitchens created similar opportunities. By March 1945, approximately 2,800 Italian women worked as kitchen assistants for American units across northern Italy. Mess sergeant reports indicate many initially struggled with American cooking equipment, pressure cookers, industrial mixers, and refrigeration units unfamiliar in rural Italian communities. Yet these jobs paid 80–90 lire daily with meals included, creating economic security impossible in the brothel system. More significantly, kitchen work required collaboration rather than submission, teaching transferable skills while building workplace relationships. The transition extended beyond physical labor. As Allied forces established more permanent headquarters in liberated regions, administrative positions emerged. Records from Allied military government offices in Florence document 427 Italian women hired as typists, translators, and telephone operators by May 1945. While representing a small percentage of total employment, these roles held particular significance for former brothel workers. Women previously valued solely for physical attributes now received training in office skills, language proficiency, and communication technologies. Lieutenant Michael Carswell, whose personnel reports provide valuable documentation, noted, "Italian women with brothel backgrounds often prove our most effective office workers. They demonstrate remarkable adaptability, discretion with sensitive information, and ability to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics. Their past teaches skills valuable in military administration, reading people quickly, maintaining composure under pressure, and managing multiple demands simultaneously." As employment options expanded, spatial boundaries shifted. American military police logs record declining enforcement of fraternization regulations, as relationships between American personnel and local women increasingly occurred in public spaces rather than brothel settings. Women previously confined to chiusa now appeared in PX cafeterias, at military film screenings, and at recreational events organized for troops. The 5th Infantry Division's Christmas celebration in December 1944 included 346 Italian female guests, according to event records, with no distinction made between women of different social backgrounds. These shifts triggered community responses. Catholic parishes initially condemned women from brothels entering conventional employment, with priests in several communities threatening excommunication. Yet American chaplains intervened, facilitating meetings with church authorities. Captain Francis O'Malley, a Catholic chaplain whose correspondence with Vatican representatives survives in military archives, argued successfully for rehabilitation rather than continued stigmatization. By spring 1945, several dioceses had established transition homes where former brothel workers could reside while building new lives through American employment opportunities. Local government responses varied significantly by region. In southern communities where American forces had been present longest, municipal authorities gradually modified regulations regarding former prostitutes. Naples City Archives document revised housing ordinances passed in February 1945, eliminating restrictions that had confined brothel workers to designated neighborhoods. In northern regions more recently under Allied control, resistance remained stronger, with police occasionally arresting women seen with American personnel despite their legitimate employment. The economic impact extended beyond individual women. As former brothel workers earned legitimate wages, many sent money to family members displaced by war. American Red Cross records indicate approximately 35% of Italian women employed by military forces supported at least 3 additional family members. This financial responsibility transformed social perceptions, as women previously defined by moral condemnation became essential providers during acute post-war shortages. The mathematics of survival superseded moral judgment. A woman earning 90 lire daily through American employment could support elderly parents or younger siblings when few other options existed. The changes initiated in individual women's lives gradually rippled outward into broader Italian society. As Allied forces consolidated control through 1945 and into post-war reconstruction, communities confronted contradictions between traditional moral hierarchies and undeniable economic realities. Census data from Naples, collected in October 1945, revealed that approximately 6% of households were now supported primarily by women formerly employed in chiusa who had transitioned to legitimate employment through American opportunities. Their economic contribution could not be dismissed, even as their past remained stigmatized. In villages near major American installations, social boundaries blurred further. Maria Lombardi, who had worked in a casa chiusa in Salerno until finding employment with an American field hospital, described her community's transformation. "When I first walked freely through the village market buying food with earned money, women pulled their children away. 6 months later, those same women asked my help securing positions with American units. Necessity proved stronger than judgment." Local government reports confirm this pattern. Initial ostracism gradually yielding to pragmatic acceptance as American employment offered wages 300 to 400% higher than available alternatives. Marriage patterns shifted dramatically in regions with sustained American presence. Municipal records from 10 southern Italian communities show 137 marriages between former brothel workers and local men between January and December 1946, a phenomenon unrecorded in pre-war decades. These marriages typically involved war widowers or returning soldiers facing economic hardship, who prioritized the financial stability these women had achieved over traditional moral considerations. While often conducted quietly without church ceremonies, these unions nonetheless represented fundamental reorganization of social hierarchies based on economic rather than moral calculations. Religious authorities struggled to adapt to these changing dynamics. Catholic church archives contain numerous communications between parish priests and diocesan officials requesting guidance. A letter from Father Giovanni Tassone of Cassino, dated March 1946, illustrates the dilemma. Among my parishioners are 7 women formerly in brothels, now employed by Americans, supporting elderly parents and orphaned siblings. They attend Mass, request confession, and contribute generously to reconstruction. Their current virtue seems sincere, yet their past remains. How shall the Church respond? The responses increasingly favored redemption over continued condemnation. Particularly as these women's economic contributions to family survival proved essential during acute post-war shortages. The children of case-choose women experienced particularly profound transformations. Prior to American arrival, approximately 85% of children born to brothel workers were removed to orphanages or distant family members. By 1947, social service records indicate that women employed through American connections increasingly maintained custody of their children. In American-administered regions, authorities provided family housing allowances without moral distinctions, enabling family preservation previously impossible. Educational records from Naples show 172 children of former brothel workers enrolled in public schools by 1948. Their mothers' improved status and stable income overcoming traditional barriers to social integration. Community leadership patterns revealed further evolution. Municipal records from Foggia document the election of Teresa Caputo, who had worked in a casa, chiusa until finding employment with American forces, to a neighborhood reconstruction committee in November 1947. Her campaign highlighted not moral rehabilitation, but practical skills. I have worked with Americans for 3 years, understand their systems, speak their language, and can negotiate effectively for our community's needs. Her election, while controversial, demonstrated pragmatic recognition that experience with American administration represented valuable social capital in post-war reconstruction. American cultural influences accelerated these changes. As American films, music, and magazines circulated in post-war Italy, they presented alternative gender frameworks challenging traditional Italian hierarchies. Hollywood movies showing independent working women contradicted fascist gender ideology. American popular music with themes of romance and individual choice undermined arranged marriage traditions. While Italian elites dismissed these as vulgar cultural intrusions, they resonated with women seeking to redefine themselves beyond traditional limitations. The transformation extended to legal frameworks. In regions under Allied military government through 1947, local legal codes were modified to eliminate distinctions between honorable and fallen women in matters of employment, housing, and civil rights. While national Italian law maintained these distinctions until later reforms, American-administered regions implemented practical equality that permanently altered social expectations. Women previously defined exclusively by moral transgression increasingly gained recognition as workers, mothers, community members, complex individuals, rather than one-dimensional symbols of vice. Statistics from social welfare agencies document this transition quantitatively. A 1949 study of 500 women formerly employed in case chiusa found dramatically different outcomes based on American employment exposure. Among those who had worked with American forces, 73% maintained independent households, 62% supported family members, and 68% reported continued employment. Among those without American employment history, only 31% maintained independent living situations, with many returning to prostitution despite its decreased profitability in post-war economic conditions. The long-term impact of these wartime transformations manifested most dramatically in Italy's legal revolution regarding prostitution. When Senator Lena Merlin introduced legislation in 1948 to abolish state-regulated brothels, she faced fierce opposition from traditionalists claiming the system protected public health and moral order. Yet her most powerful allies emerged unexpectedly, women whose direct experience within the case chiusa system provided testimony that transformed abstract debate into human reality. Parliamentary records show that 17 former brothel workers testified before legislative committees between 1949 and 1958. Their accounts of dehumanization under state regulation contrasted sharply with their subsequent experiences of personhood after American occupation. Carmela Rossi, now employed as an administrative assistant with an American oil company in Naples, testified in February 1953. The state regulation system classified us as disease risks requiring control rather than women deserving dignity. My experience with Americans demonstrated that respect dramatically improved both health outcomes and public order, precisely the opposite of what defenders of the old system claim. Her testimony, delivered in professional attire with precise statistical evidence about disease rates before and after American intervention, symbolized the transformation from object to citizen that the Merlin Law sought to formalize nationally. The law's eventual passage in 1958 represented Italy's definitive break with fascist-era gender policies. Statistical evidence overwhelmingly supported reform, with health department data showing that regions transitioning from regulated brothels to education-based approaches following American models experienced 42% reduction in sexually transmitted infections between 1948 and 1956. The economic data proved equally compelling. Tax records documented that former case chiusa women who found legitimate employment contributed approximately 1.7 million lire annually to the national economy, compared to the minimal taxation revenue from the brothel system. Individual stories revealed the most profound transformations. Sofia Bianchi, who had entered a Florence brothel at 17 after bombing destroyed her family home, responded to American employment opportunities by saving enough to open a small laundering business by 1952. Municipal records show her business employed 7 women, 5 formerly from case chiusa, by 1960. When interviewed for a parliamentary study in 1962, she emphasized the psychological rather than material transformation. The casa chiusa taught me I was worthless, except for men's momentary use. The Americans treated me as Signorina Bianchi, with skills and potential. I built my business on that foundation, the recognition that I possessed value beyond my body. Marriage records from 1950 through 1965 document fascinating patterns among women from brothel backgrounds. Those who experienced American employment showed dramatically different outcomes than those who remained within traditional frameworks. Among 250 former case chiusa workers tracked in a longitudinal study by the University of Rome, those with American employment experience married at twice the rate of those without such experience and reported 63% lower divorce rates. When interviewed, many attributed this stability to transformed self-perception. They entered marriages as equal partners rather than as women with permanently compromised social value. Educational achievement patterns revealed another dimension of this transformation. Before American occupation, women from brothel backgrounds rarely pursued education, regardless of native intelligence or ambition. Academic records from adult education programs established in post-war Italy show that former chiusa women who had worked with Americans enrolled in continuing education at rates 440% higher than those without such experience. By 1970, approximately 115 former brothel workers had completed university degrees, a phenomenon previously unrecorded in Italian social history. The transmission of these changed expectations to the next generation created multiplicative effects. Children of women who experienced the transition from prostitute to signorina consistently showed higher educational attainment, later marriage age, and more egalitarian gender attitudes than statistical norms. A sociological study published in 1975 found that daughters of former chiusa women who had worked with Americans pursued professional careers at rates nearly equal to daughters of middle-class families. A remarkable transcendence of expected social reproduction patterns. Carmela Rossi, interviewed for a documentary when she was 72, reflected on the transformation initiated that spring day in Cassino. "When the American sergeant called me Signorina, I thought he was mocking me. I didn't understand that he simply saw a young woman, not a brothel worker. That moment contained everything. The recognition that I existed as a person worthy of basic courtesy. I had forgotten my own humanity until it was reflected back to me in that simple word." Her life's trajectory, from casa chiusa to office management, from numbered brothel identification to respected community elder, embodied the journey from object to citizen that thousands of women experienced through this unexpected collision between American democratic idealism and Italian fascist gender hierarchies. The women who expected brutality from American soldiers instead encountered the revolutionary power of common courtesy. The simple word signorina, Miss Young Lady, contained recognition of individual humanity that fascism had systematically stripped away. The transformation that followed demonstrated that respect functions as agent of social change more powerful than regulation or force. Women previously defined exclusively by sexual utility discovered capacities for work, leadership, education, and full citizenship. Their journey from brothel to ballot box, from numbered identification to individual names, from objects to citizens, remains one of World War II's least recognized but most profound revolutionary transformations, not through military force, but through the unexpected power of being called Signorina by American soldiers who simply didn't know they were supposed to see less than a human being worthy of basic respect.